Great. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for spending just a little bit of time with us today. This is going to be a shorter session for us, but really important for all of that brief time, because this is a moment where we're trying to respond to an ongoing event and some of the impacts down at the Whitney Plantation in Louisiana. And so we're lucky enough to be here with the wonderful Ashley Rogers. For folks who don't know us, my name is Braden Painter. I'm the Director of Methodology and Practice at the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience. The coalition is a network of more than 330 museums, historic sites, places of memory in more than 65 countries around the world, all of whom are dedicated to using the past to take on some of society's most challenging issues and help people build more just and humane futures. And one of the amazing members of the coalition is the Whitney Plantation and Ashley, who does great work with all of that. So Ashley, before we jump into what's been happening there lately, would you tell people a little bit about who you are as a site and what some of the impacts of your site are?
Sure. So Whitney Plantation is a site dedicated to the history of slavery on Louisiana plantations. It is sitting on the site of a former sugarcane, indigo, and rice plantation, which was established in 1752. And the plantation was operational until 1975. So it spans a 220-year history that's about evenly split between slavery and wage labor. And so our site is not only a place where people can come to learn about the history of plantations in the Deep South and how they functioned and how enslaved people lived, with a total focus on the experience of enslavement, but it's also a memorial site. As you point out, you represent all these different sites of memory. We have several memorials and monumental art also on the grounds where people can also reflect about the history as well. So it serves both functions. We have had a trying couple of years between COVID and now this hurricane, and so visitation is very, very different from what it once was, but typically we see about 100,000 visitors a year from all over the world, who are all coming to learn about this crucial part of our past.
Yeah, and as somebody who's been lucky enough to be there a few times, it's an incredible place to visit, and I would encourage everybody who has a chance, when things are capable of it, of doing that and checking out their great programming. So yeah, it's been a couple of challenging years for lots of people, but you've had some immediate challenges with the hurricane. Can you bring us up to date on sort of what happened with that and what's the state of things now?
Yeah, so hurricanes are funny because they kind of, they come through and they get a whole lot of attention. And then I think a lot of folks sort of move on, but the recovery effort from hurricanes is very, very lengthy. And so we're very much still in the middle of that. Hurricane Ida made a direct pass over the plantation on August 29th. So this was the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. A lot of people in South Louisiana were really feeling, a little extra, I think, fear and nervousness just because of that kind of anniversary date. And this was for St. John the Baptist Parish, which is the county where Whitney Plantation is. This was an incredibly strong hurricane. So it made landfall just south of us as a Category 4, and it was still a Category 3 when it made a direct hit. At Whitney Plantation, they have not seen a hurricane of this strength since 1965 with Hurricane Betsy. And what happened at our site and in, really the surrounding community as well, is that we saw really tremendous destruction. So Whitney has about 16 original buildings, which are all on the National Register as a historic district, which span the years, 1790 at the earliest through the 1950s, showing kind of that full use of the plantation through these different eras of its history. And then we also have several buildings that we've brought in from different parts of Louisiana that aren't original to the site, but are original buildings from different locations in Louisiana. So we had 5 additional slave cabins that were brought in from Terrebonne Parish, nearby parish, and also a church building, which was brought from just across the river. So we have kind of a variety of buildings on the site, over 20 in total. All of them received damage to greater and lesser degrees. And so we're currently trying to manage a recovery that just keeps getting bigger. You know, it seems like every time we go out there, we're learning about new things, you know, buildings that looked like they were okay. It turns out when you actually look inside, they're not okay. We had 3 total losses, buildings that just were flattened by the storm. And we have 2 more that are probably not going to make it. We don't know what's going to happen with those, but it may not be possible to save them just because of the level of destruction that they've received, being blown off piers, lost, you know, a whole second story, you know, really, really extreme destruction. We're fortunate that the 2 remaining original slave cabins, which were still in use on the property till 1975, where the last field worker families lived in those cabins. Those survived. They did get damaged, but they will survive. Our original kitchen, the original owner's house, all of these buildings are basically okay, but all of them are going to need pretty serious repairs. One of the original buildings that I'm most concerned about is actually the Plantation store, which was built in the 1890s. The reason I'm so concerned about it is because it was until the storm pretty well preserved. And it really tells a story about what happened to field workers after slavery. You know, a lot of times they were staying on plantations and they were kind of trapped in these cycles of debt. And the store is very much a part of that, where, you know, they would buy things on credit to the plantation owner and then, you know, always be kind of working off this debt to the owner. And we had not yet restored that building. It wasn't open to the public, but it was kind of next on my list and really wanting to restore that so that people could access it and see what it looked like. I have a lot of oral histories about what it looked like and what they sold. We have a lot of records about that store. It lost half of its roof and water was coming in for several days. And having just gone inside pretty recently, it has the floor inside has buckled up. So I'm not sure what needs to happen to that building, but it is in much worse shape than it was previously. And we haven't yet been able to repair any of the roofs that are damaged. In addition to that, the church, which was built by Freeman in 1870, moved from across the river, is in very rough shape, had really significant wind damage on that structure. And because it has kind of specialized, you know, needs in terms of preservation, we're still trying to find out how much it's going to cost to repair that. Some of these buildings are covered by insurance and some of them are not. So that's kind of our issue. The church is, the store is not. So, you know, trying to negotiate this, you know, just basically through donations, and the insurance that we do have has been really challenging.
And I know having stood in that church is an incredibly powerful space. And right, as you're thinking about these buildings, they are these entry points into people's lives who have been attempted to be left out of the historical record so often. And so that, tell us just a little bit about what these buildings do for us in terms of what we're able to see, who we're able to understand, how we're able to, you know, access, meet the better understanding of even our own world here today through these structures. What doors do they open up to us?
Yeah, well, I think that, you know, these are structures that were incredibly meaningful and significant to so many generations of Black people in Louisiana. You know, the church that we have there, so as I mentioned, it was built by freed people in 1870, but it was in operation until, you know, the early 2000s, which means that it was a place of refuge for formerly enslaved people in the immediate aftermath of the Civil War, but it continued to be a place of community and, family and support for generations, over 100 years of people in South Louisiana. And there are still people who live in that area today who remember being baptized in that church or being married in that church. So it's an incredibly meaningful structure for the community. I think that sometimes, at Whitney, because we do have some buildings that are not original, sometimes people might think that that means that they're not significant, but they are original buildings to other places. These are still really significant buildings to these communities. The cabins that we've lost now because of the storm were homes to generations of field workers in Louisiana. And they tell a really compelling story about the life of field workers, of enslaved people, before and after the Civil War. The kind of living conditions that people had. And so many of these buildings, like what just happened to us, so many of these buildings have been lost over the years, whether it's through neglect or just loss of use. I mean, really, these are not buildings that a lot of people felt compelled to save. And so, the reason why we had those buildings from another plantation in the first place is because someone else was going to tear them down. So these are buildings that have just been kind of carelessly lost, and we lose this whole connection to our past. So Whitney was really about preserving that. So the fact that we've lost it is not just, oh, that's too bad they weren't original. It's, oh, we've lost a real serious connection to our past and to generations of African Americans in this part of the country.
Yeah. I know you all are fighting to try and save them right now. So how can folks who are listening to this and want to be a part of making sure that those windows into the past, those mirrors to our present, continue to be there, continue to be able to be accessed, continue to be able to tell their stories? What are ways that they can support you? And because I know you all are also invested in the wider communities around you, how can they support the larger area as well?
Yeah, so right, the best way that people can support us is by sharing our story and letting people know that this is still very much a recovery. We're closed indefinitely. We have no idea when we'll be able to reopen, just because of safety issues and also, just getting the basic infrastructure back up and running. So people can make donations on our website. If you go to our main website, whitneyplantation.org, we have a donate link. If you do whitneyplantation.org/donate, you go directly to it. We are a 501c3, so all of the donations are tax deductible. And we are still, it's important to note that, like, a lot of the people who work at Whitney Plantation are from this local community. They're managing their own, as much as we're trying to deal with Whitney, people have these problems in their homes too. A lot of our staff members are kind of displaced, trying to figure out how to repair their roofs, how to, how much they've lost, negotiating FEMA, all of this stuff. We've continued to keep everybody on the payroll while we're closed. So one of the other things that donations help with is directly paying our staff members, many of whom are actually descendants from that community too. So there is an element of kind of direct relief. Our director of communications also has a separate nonprofit organization, and she's doing mutual aid through the community. And so that's called the Descendants Project, if folks want to look that up as well. She's doing distribution of supplies on this coming Sunday, and they've been tarping roofs in the community as well. So there's a few different areas where people can kind of help out, both, whichever one they want to do, helping the museum, which is really helpful, helping us getting this out, helping the community, kind of doing both.
Great. And I hope people are able to do that and take just a little bit of time to do that, because you'll have really big impacts on folks right now. But I think also, as Ashley's talked about in a couple of ways, any one of these single events has such lasting impact, right? As the stories you tell have played out over the course of centuries, or you're talking about even the way Hurricane Katrina is something that folks are remembering years later. Right? And so that as we try and think about how to untangle these legacies, right, places like Whitney are so critical. I think the good news is that the ripples of, right, people leaning into these spaces and being a part of supporting them also can last over decades and centuries as well. So if folks have the chance to do that, support Whitney, support the community there, you'll have a big impact and really make a difference for folks now and in the future. So thanks to everybody who chooses to do that. And actually, thank you for taking time out of your crazy busy schedule right now, trying to save all of these buildings and try and do all the repair work there to talk with us and with everybody else today. So it's always good to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you too. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. And thanks everybody for joining us.